You ever been in a meeting where everyone agrees on a plan, but you're sitting there secretly thinking, this is a terrible idea? Or, you watch a huge company launch some new product and you just know it's going to fail. Well, it's not because the people involved aren't smart. It's because our brains are just full of these hidden traps and biases that can make even the brightest people go completely off the rails. So let's dive in and unpack the psychology behind why we make bad choices.
So to kick things off, let's ask a really fundamental question about who we are as people. What's our first impulse? When we don't have time to think, are we generous or are we greedy? Do we cooperate or do we look out for number one? The answer might actually surprise you.
Now check this out. This is from a study in the journal Nature, and it's fascinating. When they forced people to make a choice instantly, like go with your gut, about 2/3 of them chose to cooperate with the group. But when they gave people time to think about it, to deliberate, cooperation dropped a lot. It kind of seems like our automatic gut reaction is to be generous, but the moment we start overthinking, our more calculated, self-interested side can take over. And right there, that's the first trap.
Okay, so that little paradox inside our own heads, it gets way, way more complicated when we get together in teams. You'd think, hey, more brains in the room means better decisions, right? Well, a lot of the time, it just means there are more ways for things to go completely, spectacularly wrong.
So the first big one is a classic you've probably heard of, groupthink. This is that really powerful unspoken pressure in a room to just agree. It's where the desire for harmony completely trumps a realistic look at the actual options. Basically, it's a whole team convincing itself a bad idea is a good one just because nobody wants to be the person to rock the boat.
I mean, just look at Quibi. This is a perfect example. They had almost $2 billion in funding. They had all the biggest names in Hollywood signed on. And the idea was these quick bites of video for your phone. It completely crashed and burned in just 6 months. How did so many smart, successful people get something so wrong? It's a classic case where you have to ask, was anyone in that room actually challenging the main idea? Or was the hype train just moving too fast to stop?
So, why does this happen? Well, the psychology behind it is super powerful. First, there's just that basic human need to fit in. Speaking up and disagreeing is uncomfortable, right? Especially if there are important people in the room. Then, the group starts to feel like it can't fail, which leads to them shutting out other ideas. And when you add a tight deadline to all that, well, agreeing becomes the path of least resistance. It's almost inevitable.
But what if the problem is even weirder than that? What if a group agrees on something that, and get this, literally nobody in the group actually wants to do? This image right here, it's the perfect metaphor for this bizarre kind of collective self-sabotage. It's called the Abilene paradox. So the story goes like this. There's a family, it's a hot day, and someone kind of half-heartedly suggests a long drive to a town called Abilene for dinner. Everybody agrees, not wanting to be a party pooper. So they go. The drive is hot, it's long, the food is awful, and on the miserable ride home, they all start admitting, one by one, that they never wanted to go. They only went because they thought everyone else wanted to. That's the paradox. A whole group taking a trip that not a single person wanted.
The main reason this happens is something called pluralistic ignorance. It's a bit of a mouthful, but the idea is simple. We look at what other people are doing, we see them nodding, and we assume their actions match what they truly believe. So we nod too, because we don't want to cause trouble. The huge mistake is we forget that they're probably doing the exact same thing, looking at us for cues. It's a total collective misreading of the room.
Now, these big group failures, they don't just happen in a vacuum. They're actually fueled by all these faulty mental shortcuts, these biases that are hardwired into each and every one of our brains. So let's zoom in a bit and see how these little individual glitches can cause massive problems.
All right, time for a quick pop quiz. Don't think too hard, just go with your gut feeling. What's more likely to kill you, a shark attack or a fallen coconut?
The answer is falling coconuts. Yeah, and it's not even close, actually. Now, if you got that wrong, don't worry, you are definitely not alone. Most people say sharks, and the reason why we get it wrong points to a huge bias in how we think.
This is what's called the availability heuristic. See, our brains don't really operate on cold, hard statistics. They run on stories. And shark attacks are these vivid, scary stories. We've all seen the movies. So that memory is super available in our heads. A falling coconut? Not so much. We make the mistake of thinking that because something is easy to remember, it must be common. And that can totally mess up how we see the world.
Okay, here's another one for you, and it's going to sound absolutely ridiculous.
Is it possible that a completely random number, like the last 2 digits of your social security number, could affect how much you're willing to pay for a bottle of wine? It sounds crazy, but let's see what some researchers at MIT discovered.
So in this study, they had students write down the last 2 digits of their social and then bid on stuff, like a bottle of wine. The result? It was absolutely wild. The students with higher social security numbers submitted bids that were 60 to 120% higher than the students with low numbers. That first number, even though it was totally random and meaningless, had a huge effect.
This is a classic example of anchoring bias. Our brain latches onto the very first piece of information it gets, the anchor, and then has a really hard time moving away from it. It's why the sticker price on a car is so important in a negotiation. That first number just gets stuck in our head, and everything else is judged against it.
Okay, so we've looked at the traps. We've got groupthink, the Abilene paradox, and all our brain's little biases. It sounds kind of bleak, I know. But here's the good news. Once you can name these traps, you can start building the tools to get around them.
To fight groupthink, you have to be intentional about creating some friction. So keep your teams from getting too big. Actively, and I mean actively, ask for different points of view. You can even appoint someone to be the devil's advocate. Their only job is to argue against whatever the popular idea is. Another great trick is to force the team to come up with a totally separate second solution. And always be suspicious of big decisions made under a ton of time pressure.
And what about avoiding that terrible trip to Abilene? The secret here is making it safe for people to say what they really think. Don't frame the question as, are we doing this, yes or no? Instead, ask, okay, what are all of our options here? Create a real space for people to suggest alternatives. And if you still feel like you're not getting the truth, there's a simple, powerful tool, a private vote. It's amazing how an anonymous ballot can instantly break that spell of everyone just going along to get along.
You know, at the end of the day, it all comes down to this. Making good decisions isn't just about getting a bunch of smart people in a room. It's about having a smart process. The best teams, they don't just focus on the decision itself. They build a system that protects them from their own worst instincts.
So, we've just pulled back the curtain on some of the biggest ways our brains can trick us. And honestly, just knowing that these traps exist is the most important step. So I'll leave you with a question to think about. Now that you know all this, what's the first decision, or maybe the first group assumption, that you're going to look at in a completely new light?